Okay, so omega-3s, right? Everyone's talking about them. They're supposed to be like this magic solution for a long, healthy life. You see them everywhere. Supplements, fortified foods, even like, those fancy eggs at the grocery store. But what does the science really say about all these claims? That's what we're diving into today. So if you're someone who pops fish oil pills every morning thinking it's the key to immortality, you might want to buckle up because we found some pretty surprising stuff.
Yeah, it's really wild how omega-3s have become this health buzzword, Almost like we've been programmed to think that a handful of fish oil is going to solve all our problems.
Oh, forget the apple a day. Just
Uh,
give me my omega-3s and I'm good.
yeah.
And we've all seen those, those pictures of centenarians, those people living to 100, and they're like, the secret, fish, lots of fish. It's hard not to get caught up in that kind of stuff.
Totally. Those stories, they're powerful. They tap into this human desire for easy answers to these really complex health problems. But as is usually the case, the truth is way more complicated.
Yeah, and that's where this deep dive comes in. We went through a ton of research on omega-3s, and let me tell you, some of it was really eye-opening. We started with the 2018 Cochrane Review, which is basically the gold standard in research.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The gold standard.
They don't just pick and choose studies they like. They analyze all the high-quality research out there on a specific topic.
And this particular review, it was huge. I mean, they looked at data from over 162,000 people. We're talking mega study here, not just some small experiment.
Exactly. So, huge study, lots of data. What did they find? Well, you know how omega-3s are marketed as this, miracle cure for heart disease? The Cochrane Review found they basically did nothing to prevent heart attacks, strokes, or even death.
And it doesn't stop at heart health. They also found no real benefit for brain health, which is another big one you hear about all the time with omega-3s.
Right. So much for the fountain of youth. But before anyone freaks out and chucks their fish oil in the trash, it's important to know this doesn't mean omega-3s are completely useless. They might have some small benefits, like maybe reducing triglyceride levels, but it definitely makes you question this whole idea that they're a magic bullet for everything.
Totally. And it's so important to look beyond just the headlines and really understand what the research is actually saying?
Absolutely. So we started digging deeper into how omega-3 research is actually done. And this is where things get interesting. One thing we noticed was that a lot of these studies, they focus on people who are already unhealthy,
Interesting.
like they already have heart problems or other health issues.
Right. So you have to wonder, are the positive effects from the omega-3s themselves, or are they from other changes they're making in their lives at the same time? Maybe they're eating better overall or finally exercising. It's hard to tell.
Exactly. That's the classic correlation versus causation problem. Just because two things happen at the same time doesn't mean one caused the other.
Absolutely. And then you've got this whole substitution effect thing to think about.
Okay, substitution effect. For those of us who aren't scientists, what does that even mean?
So basically, the benefits that people think are coming from omega-3s, they might actually be from simply replacing unhealthy fats in their diet with healthier ones. Like instead of eating a bunch of saturated and trans fats, they start taking omega-3s and maybe cut back on those bad fats at the same time.
So it's like swapping out your daily bag of chips for some almonds.
Mhm.
The real benefit is from not eating the chips, not because the almonds are magical.
Exactly. And on top of that, let's talk about how a lot of these studies are designed. Believe it or not, many omega-3 studies use what's called an open label design, meaning the researchers and the participants know who's getting the omega-3s and who's getting a placebo.
Wait, hold on. That doesn't seem very scientific. Knowing who's getting what totally skew the results.
Right. Think about it. If you knew you were getting the good stuff, you might unconsciously change your behavior. Like, you might start eating better or working out more often because you think you're on this health kick, and that could completely mess with the study results.
Wow, that makes total sense. And to make things even trickier, it seems like every study uses different types and doses of omega-3s. Some use fish oil, others use algal oil, and the amounts of EPA and DHA are all over the place.
And just to clarify for our listeners, EPA and DHA are the two main types of omega-3s, and they can have totally different effects on your body.
Right. EPA is usually linked to those heart health benefits, while DHA is more associated with brain health, although the evidence for that is kind of shaky.
Exactly. So trying to compare these studies is like comparing apples to oranges. You're never really sure what you're looking at.
It's like trying to hit a moving target in a dark room. So we've got these potential problems with the research itself, but it doesn't end there, does it? We also have to talk about who's funding all of this research. And this is where things get really, really interesting. A lot of omega-3 research is funded by, you guessed it, supplement companies.
It's a classic case of follow the money, right? Of course, the companies selling these products are going to want to see positive results. That doesn't mean that all industry-funded research is bad, but it's definitely something to keep in mind.
For sure. They've got a vested interest in convincing us that their products work. And let's be real, these companies have huge marketing budgets. We see those glossy ads everywhere, like take this one tiny pill and all your health problems will vanish.
And it's not just the ads. Have you seen those omega-3 index tests?
Yeah, vaguely. It's like they measure how much omega-3 is in your blood or something, right?
Exactly. They take your blood, analyze your red blood cells, and give you a number. And conveniently, they've got a specific range they say everyone should aim for.
Which, of course, just happens to be the range that would encourage you to buy more of their products.
Bingo. Look, I'm not saying that measuring omega-3 levels is useless, but there's a concern that this whole ideal index thing might be driven more by profit than actual science. It's like they're creating a problem so they can sell you the solution.
It's brilliant marketing, but is it good science? That's the big question.
Yeah.
And honestly, this whole deep dive just reinforces how important it is to be really careful about the health information we consume. We can't just believe everything we read, especially when it comes to supplements and health claims.
Absolutely. It's like drinking from a fire hose of information out there, and it can be so overwhelming. Always question where the information is coming from. Who funded the research? What are they trying to sell you? And when in doubt, talk to your doctor before you start taking anything new.
Solid advice. Now, get this. We've talked about the potential for misleading claims about omega-3s, but get this. They might actually be straight up risky for some people.
Yeah, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. This is where things get even more interesting. Let's talk about LDL cholesterol for a second.
Okay, LDL cholesterol, that's the bad kind we're always trying to keep low. What about it?
Some studies are suggesting that taking omega-3s, particularly a type called DHA, might actually increase LDL cholesterol levels in some people.
Wait, seriously, I thought omega-3s were supposed to be good for your heart.
It does seem kind of backwards, right? But it all comes down to how these different fatty acids interact with our bodies. While EPA, another type of omega-3, has been linked to lower LDL cholesterol, DHA seems to have the opposite effect in some folks.
So you're telling me taking something for your heart health could potentially backfire?
That's the concern. And it's definitely something to be aware of, especially if you're already at risk for heart disease.
Wow, okay. So we need to be mindful of LDL cholesterol, especially with DHA. This is a lot to take in. And speaking of things that are a lot to take in, this next part really made us scratch our heads. We started looking at some of those longest living populations around the world.
You mean like those centenarians, those folks who live to be over 100. What's their secret?
Exactly. And guess what? A lot of them don't actually eat much fish, which is where we usually get most of our omega-3s from. It kind of makes you question everything you thought you knew. If you're talking about those blue zones, right? Like Sardinia, Nicoya, Okinawa, those places where people seem to live forever, you'd think they'd be like chugging fish oil by the gallon. But it turns out, not so much.
It's true. Their diets are all a little different, of course. But yeah, fish isn't always a big part of it. The Okinawans, for example, they traditionally ate a lot of plant-based stuff like sweet potatoes. And then you've got a lot of Adventists in Loma Linda, another one of those longevity hotspots. And many of them are vegetarian or vegan.
So maybe fish and those omega-3s we get from fish, they're not the magic key to a long life after all. Makes you think, right? Maybe we've been so focused on this one nutrient that we've missed the bigger picture.
Yeah, there are so many things that go into living a long, healthy life, you know? It's your genes, your lifestyle, your social connections, and of course, your overall diet. Fish, or omega-3s, might just be like one tiny piece of a much bigger puzzle.
This deep dive is full of surprises. Speaking of which, there's one more finding we need to talk about that might make you put down that fish oil bottle. It's about a potential link between omega-3s and heart rhythm problems, specifically atrial fibrillation.
Right. This is another area where the research is, well, it's a little murky. There have been some big studies like the REDUCE-IT trial and the STRENGTH trial, and these were not small studies. And they found a possible connection between taking omega-3 supplements, especially at high doses, and an increased risk of atrial fibrillation.
Hold on. So not just LDL cholesterol, but now we also have to worry about heart rhythm issues.
Yeah.
This is getting complicated.
It can be. That's why it's so crucial to talk to your doctor before you start taking any new supplement, even something as common as omega-3s. They can help you weigh the risks and benefits based on your own personal health history.
Totally agree. Never a good idea to just jump on the latest health bandwagon without talking to your doc first. Speaking of which, how can our listeners be smarter about evaluating health information in general? There's so much out there these days. It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a minefield out there.
Hmm.
Conflicting claims, catchy headlines. One thing I always tell people is look at the source. Who paid for this research? What are their motives? Are they trying to sell you something?
Right. I have this friend who's convinced that activated charcoal is like the cure for everything. Bloating, bad breath, you name it. Sometimes it's hard to know what to believe.
And that's exactly what we need to watch out for, those like oversimplified solutions to complex health problems. Remember, there's a lot of money to be made in the health and wellness industry, and sometimes accurate, unbiased information gets lost in all the marketing noise.
So, to recap, talk to your doctor, be skeptical, and don't believe everything you read, especially when it comes to health fads. Got it. But let's get back to omega-3s for a sec. If they're not the miracle cure we thought they were, what are they actually good for?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The evidence for preventing big things like heart attacks and strokes is pretty iffy, but there is some research suggesting that omega-3s might be helpful for certain health conditions.
Okay, give me some good news here. What kind of conditions are we talking about?
Well, there's some evidence that omega-3s can help reduce inflammation in the body.
Okay, reducing inflammation, that's good, right? Tell me more.
So inflammation is totally normal. It's how your body heals itself. But when you have chronic, low-grade inflammation, that's been linked to a whole bunch of health problems, from heart disease to arthritis. So if omega-3s can help keep that in check, that's definitely a positive.
Right, it's all about balance.
It-
Anything else? Any other potential benefits?
There's also some evidence that omega-3s could be helpful for managing rheumatoid arthritis, which is, a really painful autoimmune disease that affects the joints.
So not a cure-all, but not totally useless either. Sounds like the big takeaway here is moderation and personalized advice.
Absolutely. More is not always better when it comes to supplements. It's about finding what works best for you. And that often means talking to a healthcare professional you trust.
It's funny how this deep dive has totally changed how I think about omega-3s. We started out thinking they were this magic bullet, and now it's like they're more like this complicated tool. You really need to know how to use it.
That's a great way to put it. Just like any tool, you got to use it wisely. But here's the thing, and this goes back to what we were talking about with the centenarians, all this focus on omega-3 supplements. It might be distracting us from something much bigger when it comes to longevity and just feeling good overall.
You mean focusing on those lifestyle factors we talked about before?
Exactly. Things like diet, exercise, sleep, stress, social connections, all those things that we know are good for us, but sometimes we forget about them.
It's like that saying, you can't outrun a bad diet.
Oh.
Or in this case, you can't just out-supplement a lifestyle that's out of whack, right?
Right.
You could be taking all the fish oil in the world, but if you're eating junk food, not sleeping, and stressed out all the time, those omega-3s aren't going to magically fix everything.
Exactly. It's about building a strong foundation of health through your lifestyle, not just looking for a quick fix in a pill bottle.
It's about the whole picture, not just one tiny piece. And speaking of the bigger picture, there's one more really important point we need to cover before we wrap up this deep dive. It really challenges the whole conventional wisdom around omega-3s, and it gets to the heart of how we approach health in our modern world. So we've been talking about how focusing just on supplements like omega-3s might be kind of missing the forest for the trees. But what does that bigger picture of health actually look like? What are we missing when we're busy searching for that magic pill?
Honestly, I think it comes down to this. Real health isn't something you find in a bottle. It's something you build day after day through the choices you make, nourishing your body with real food, moving your body, getting enough sleep, managing stress, having good relationships. It's all connected.
It's funny how we complicate things, right? We're always looking for that quick fix, when really it's those basic things, the things we already know, that make the biggest difference.
Exactly. And the best part is those boring basics. They work together. Like when you start eating better, you have more energy. And then when you have more energy, you actually want to exercise. And then when you exercise, you sleep better. It creates this amazing cycle of well-being.
That sounds like it's less about deprivation and more about making choices that actually make you feel good, both in the short term and the long term.
Exactly. It's about respecting your body and giving it what it needs to thrive.
This whole conversation has been a wild ride. We started out wondering if omega-3s were a miracle cure or just hype. And now we're talking about holistic health and the power of lifestyle changes.
That's what's so great about these deep dives. We challenge our assumptions, we dig into the details, and we come out with a much clearer understanding.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of omega-3s, what are some key takeaways our listeners can take with them?
I think the biggest one is this: knowledge is power. Don't be afraid to question what you hear. Talk to your doctor. Do your research. Be a savvy consumer when it comes to your health.
Love it. What else?
Don't get too caught up in the hype of any single nutrient or supplement, even one as popular as omega-3s. Focus on creating a lifestyle that supports your overall health and well-being. It's about the long game, not the quick fix.
It's about making those healthy choices every day.
Exactly. And remember, true health is a journey, not a destination. It's about listening to your body, being kind to yourself, and making choices that help you feel your best. Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, on that note, we'll let you get back to your health journey. Hopefully you're feeling a little wiser and more empowered after this deep dive.
Keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
That's a wrap on this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic you won't want to miss.